Hi everyone and welcome to Cloudberry Flowers. I know it's been a couple of weeks since I did a video. We're going to be having a look today at what everything is like in the garden and talking about doing that important thing, taking a break as a flower farmer in the height of your season in the middle of the summer. And it's something that can feel really daunting to do, but it's so important to make sure that you do have breaks so that you don't burn out at the end of the season. And it is really important to spend time with your families as well, because it's time you can't get back again. So although it's something that I did find very stressful, especially when I first started growing, leaving the flower patch, it was something that you did worry about. Now I'm a lot better at managing that, and I do go away and have a great time with my family, and I know that I'll be coming back to something that is manageable, and that it was worth getting that break. So we'll have a look today at the flower patch. I'm going to talk about what I do to get it in the best shape that I can leave it in to go away on a holiday, and what I do when I'm away. And then I'm going to talk about what it's like when I come back, what I have to do to get things back and be on top of it again for the rest of the season. So before I go on holiday, there are three main things that I do with the flower patches to make sure I'm happy to leave it. The first one is that I deadhead a lot of my flowers. So things like your sweet peas that you can see here, my cornflowers, all of those I would deadhead, and it does mean that you are losing those flowers. I'm just going to have to compost them, but it does mean that the plant can then put energy into producing new flowers, so when you come back from holiday they should just be at the stage where they're ready for you to pick. Whereas if you had left the sweet peas and you hadn't deadheaded them before you went away for a couple of weeks, then they might start to set seed, and once they've started that process then the flowering starts to slow down. So it's definitely worthwhile going through your flowers and seeing if anything's fully out, deadhead it, and then let that plant put its energy into making some new flowers for when you get back. Second thing that I do is I go around all the flower patches and I check that everything is staked. Here in Scotland, I know the weather can be very unpredictable. So some years I've gone on holiday and it's been really nice and sunny. Other years like this one, we've had rain every single day and it has been windy at times too. So I make sure all those new plants that are going to be later season flowers are well staked as much as I can. I put twine along the edges of the bed so that they can't move if there's a wind that's coming in a certain direction and really pushing against the flowers. I have my horizontal netting for flowers to grow through, and if it's all staked before I go, then I don't need to worry about them having any damage from the wind if it does come along. And I was glad that I did that, because we did have gale force winds on that last weekend that I was away. And the only thing that looks like it was damaged ever so slightly was that the sweet pea frame did come apart a little bit. But my dad came in and did some repair work on that, so I was lucky I had him to help out with that. And the sweet peas don't look like they've suffered at all for the damage in the structure slightly. The third thing that I do when I'm going on holiday is I go around and I water the flower patches thoroughly, and it doesn't matter whether rain is forecast the day that I leave or a couple of days after. I don't know that that actually will happen, so I just make sure that the soil is well soaked so that to start off with, those plants are going to have lots of moisture going up into the roots. And it depends how long you're going away for. Ideally you do want somebody to come in and help you out with your flower patches, or if you've got a large garden or lots of pots to look after. I'm very lucky that a few years ago my parents moved to the same town as us, and quite often they are here when we're away, so they'll come in and water for me. This is the first year that they have never had to do any watering outside in the flower patches, because it's been that wet every single day that they haven't needed to. But usually I have hose systems in place and I explain to them how it all works, and they come in and give everything a good watering for me. So that's the three things I would recommend: deadheading everything that's fully out in flower so that it works on producing new flowers while you're away. 2, make sure you have all your support in place, so that's your horizontal netting, your stakes, all tied in with your twine and things. Make sure that there's support for your plants, so it doesn't matter if there's a storm while you're away, your plants are supported. And the third thing is to give everything a really good water so that those roots have some nice moisture to soak up and help the plant to grow. And then hopefully have somebody in place that can come round and they can help water while you're away. The other really helpful thing that you can do is weed if you can before you go. If you can get those little weed seedlings out that are in the ground, then they're not going to grow into much larger weeds that you have to tackle when you come home. This fourth step for me is just a bit too much because normally I've got last minute deliveries when I am going away for florists or last minute arrangements to do. I'm packing, I've got the dog to sort out, I've got kids that are trying to sort themselves out. So I just stick with my top 3 if I can, and the weeds I have to tackle when I come back. But if you're super organised, more so than me, then do try go around, and even if it's with a hoe in between some of the plants just to get those weed seedlings out, then you'll have an easier time when you come back. Another thing that you can do before you go away on holiday, especially if it's in May, June or July, is that you can direct sow some seeds just before you go, and then when you come back after a couple of weeks, then they should have germinated, and these will provide flowers at the very end of the season for me. So just keeping that succession sowing going. So these little seedlings that you can see here are Phacelia seedlings, and these are ones that I sowed just before I went on holiday, so at the very end of June, and they've germinated while I was away. So they'll just need thinning out, and then they will provide flowers for me end of September time into October. So you're back from your holiday, you've had a fantastic time away, all relaxed, recharged your batteries to keep you going to the end of the season. Definitely really recommend having regular breaks throughout the growing season just to do that. But what are you going to find when you get back? The first thing I like to do is just go and have a good wander around the entire garden and just spot what jobs there are to do. You could take a notepad and pen round with you to make a list if that makes it easier. I would be checking for things like staking. Does anything need staking that you maybe missed before? Has anything flopped over in the wind? If you've individually staked things like sunflowers, sweet peas as well, they will have grown, so you'll need to tie them in at higher places. So just check along your sweet pea beds. You can see here that this is a seed pod that's forming, so that needs to be snipped off quickly because you don't want plants to be setting seed at this stage. You want to be constantly cutting the flowers so that they can produce new ones. But when you come back from a couple of weeks away, you may find 1 or 2 of these that have formed while you're away. So just chop them off as quickly as you can to hope that the plant will produce some new ones for you. Lots of new buds on these, so that's looking good. Any that are fully out, I will just cut back. So for instance, this one here, it's got all 4 flowers out on it. It's a little bit damaged by the weather, so I will just chop that back and allow new flowers to come. Because of the high winds on that last weekend I was away, I need to go down the whole of the length of the sweet pea bed, and I need to look and see what needs tied in. Some things have just grown taller again and need tied in with the stakes, and other things have just moved a bit because of that wind. So it's just taking any stems that are loose and tying them in around the individual stakes again, and that will give them some support. Coming back from holiday, it's the sweet peas that definitely need the most work. They were most affected by the weather, and they are also the things that have grown the most over the time that I've been away. So the stems have really lengthened and they need that tying in that we've been talking about. But also they've grown a lot of tendrils, and when they do this they can wrap around the stems, and the plant is putting a lot of effort into growing these tendrils and these stems, and you want it to be putting energy into the flowers. So I won't remove all of them, but I will certainly go around and I will chop off quite a few, especially if they're close to where there's some flowering stems on the plant. So I've just untangled that flowering stem on the sweet pea from the tendril, and we'll have a look along here. See, there's some more here that are probably going to wrap themselves around those other ones, so I'm just going to take those off, and then there's another one on the right I'll take off as well. So it's not all of them, but it's just the ones in the way of the flowers. So once the sweet peas are looking better, it's time to move on to the next job in the garden. Go around and see if anything has finished flowering. If it has, you'll need to deadhead that so it can produce new flowers. So I'll show you my cosmos just now. That is definitely an example of that, where it's fully out. I can't use it in arrangements because it is too well out. So the only thing to do there is to cut it back, and then new stems will come in a week or two's time. So have a look along your beds and see what stage the flower's at. So this one here is just starting to open. I can still cut that, it's in perfect condition. There's other ones here, you can see these are just starting to open. So these will be good for cutting. However, you can see over here, this one is fully out, it's tatty around the edges, it's been damaged by the wind and rain, and so you'll have to chop that one back. So it's just having a look through, see what you have got happening in the flower patch, and deadhead anything that's fully out like this, and then you'll get lots more blooms like this coming through. So I do have a few cosmos out in this patch here, and they're fully out and they're not usable. You can see here that they have already completely come out, and some of the petals have got some little bit of brown on them. They're a little bit water damaged from all the rain, so I will cut those back so that we can get some new stems coming through. So again, that's another one here that's fully out and it's not usable. It wouldn't last for very long in a vase at all, so it's just worth cutting any fully out flowers back, cut them back down really quite far on the stem, down to around here where you can see a new set of leaves, just cut above there, and then new stems will come up. So before I went away on holiday, the dahlias were still quite short. They have actually grown in height quite a bit since I've been away in the last couple of weeks. And I made sure that I had staked each individual dahlia. So they've got their posts in here, and they have got tied with twine around the base of the stems and attached to the post. And I've also just put some extra twine along here, attached to the tree stakes at one end, and it runs down the length of the bed, and that just helps in case there's some wind as well to stop the dahlia stems toppling too. And what I also did is, for any that I just saw and thought that the buds might be starting to come out while I was away, I put my organza bags over the top, because I didn't want to come home to dahlia flowers that were out but nibbled, and there's nothing I could do about that. So I thought I will prevent, and I will just get the organza bags on early. And actually, as it happens, they haven't, as you can see here, they haven't come out while I've been away that much at all. They've just really kind of stayed static because of the lack of sunshine. But I think it was good to get them on. We've got one or two that are out. Let's have a look. You can see here there's no damage from earwigs or thrips or slugs or snails on the petals at all. They're well protected in that organza bag. And here's another one here that's out as well, but definitely not many out. We're definitely getting more buds. You can see they're coming, but we're not quite there yet. We're not in full dahlia season yet. Just need a bit of sunshine. But apparently, according to the weather forecast, August is meant to be a lot better than July, so we'll still want some rain, but just a bit of sunshine as well. So down next to the dahlias, I've got another cosmos patch in the garden. This is not quite as far ahead as the ones that I showed you previously, but they're starting to get there now. Cosmos has put on a lot of growth, but not really got to the stage of many flowers yet. Just one or two buds that will be opening in the next couple of days. But it's looking better than it was last year, because last year wasn't so successful, and I was really careful to try and water it a lot more in June, when it was really particularly dry this year, and then we've had some good rain in July, so I think that has done better for the cosmos. It really didn't like that very dry spell last year where I perhaps didn't water enough. So hopefully in the next week or two we'll start to get some good cosmos flowering. So go around as well and check how dry your soil is. So even if it's been raining, or even if you've had somebody around doing the watering for you, just go around and check in different places in the garden how dry things are. So you can put your finger in the soil and you can see if it feels moist or whether it feels dry to touch, or you might have a moisture meter that you can put in to double check. Chances are you're probably going to have to give everything a good water again. So that's something else to do when you get back, just to make sure that those plants are having a good start at getting growing for the end of the season. Might be worth giving them a feed as well, something like tomato feed, dilute that down and give your plants a water and a feed at the same time, and that will just give them a boost for the coming weeks. So let's now go and have a look around the flower patches and see what is flowering mid-July and what things are looking like having been left for a couple of weeks. By the time you get to this stage in the season, the cornflowers that were sown in the autumn have been flowering for weeks. They're starting to get a little bit tatty. They've been blown around in the wind and the rain that we've been having constantly for the last month, and they're not looking at their best. So at this stage, if you were wanting cornflowers for flower arranging, you would want to pull these out and you would want to rely on other crops that you had succession sown. And you can pull these out of the bed and you can replace them with some fast growing flowers such as Phacelia or sunflowers that will be very quick to flower just now if you sowed them within 60 days or so for sunflowers, and within a couple of months for your Phacelia. So you'll get some right at the back end of the season if you sow them just now. I'm actually going to keep these cornflowers in because I'm not going to use them for flower arranging. I'm going to use them to make my confetti, and for that I only need the flower heads themselves. So I'm going to keep them going for a couple more weeks and then I'll harvest them for confetti and then I'll pull them out after that. Since I've been away, we have started to get some statice out, and I'm pleased to see that we're getting quite long stems as well on our statice, which is nice. Some of this will be ready for cutting next week when it's more fully out. My Buplerium has really done well over the time that I've been away, so it's going to be nice to be able to cut some of that for florists in the next week. Here we've got some lovely Daucus and we have got some Kauai daisies, and these are beautiful yellow flowers. They close up at night times and then they come out in the daytime. Really lovely pops of yellow colour, so that's a nice perennial to grow, and I'll leave a note of what that is in the description of the video so that you can see the names of the plants. When you're away on holiday, things are going to come out and flower and you're just not going to be able to cut from them because they're going to be too far out by the time you come back. But the nice thing is that you can leave the Nigella to form lovely seed pods like this, and you can use them in arrangements. Beautiful Cerinthe has continued to grow while I've been away, which is great. So we've got some nice fuller foliage there for using in arrangements. So before I went away on holiday, I made sure that I had staked all my sunflowers as well, so they all have individual canes on them. Some years I grow them through horizontal netting as well, and this year I just decided that I would use canes because I didn't have quite as many sunflowers growing. And this just provided some support, and actually was really good that I managed to get that support in, because on the last weekend that we were away we had gale force winds, and it was enough to really damage some of the sweet pea framework that I had, and my parents had to come in and rescue that. So I'm really glad that I had individually staked each sunflower, and they're not far away now. I plant them quite close together so that we get smaller usable flower heads for using in bouquets. While I've been away, the Rudbeckia has really taken on a growth spurt, and you can see here that we've started to get some flowers just coming out just now. These are my annual asters, and they've also grown quite a bit since I have been away on holiday. Now, last year I couldn't manage to get these to grow very well at all. They were extremely short, and these are looking taller already, so I'm pleased about that. A lot of other growers seem to suggest that they don't do very well with growing their annual asters outside. A lot of people grow them in polytunnels, but I don't have a polytunnel, so I thought that I would just try them again outside and see how we get on. So we'll watch these in the next few weeks and see if it's been worthwhile growing them. I think the rainy weather has suited the salvia because it is doing amazingly well in the garden, and look at this vivid blue colour, it's just absolutely beautiful. There is also some pink and white salvia in bloom at the moment too. Here's some lovely feverfew that is flowering up in the perennial beds. It has got a few weeds in amongst them, and this is where I'm going to have to do most of my work. Before I went on holiday, I was concentrating on tying in and supporting all the annuals and deadheading them, and I didn't get around to the weeding up in the perennial beds. So we've definitely got a few that you can see here, and I'll have to spend some time going around and sorting this out in the next couple of weeks. A lot of the perennials have finished their first flush of flowering as well, so things like the astrantia, it's just coming to the end, and you want to cut back any flowering stems that are left so that you'll hopefully get a second flush later on in the year in around September time. One of the most daunting things about going away on holiday is worrying about the orders when you come back. Are you going to have flowers for any weddings or any florist orders or any local customers that have ordered bouquets for that first week or two when you're back? And just wanted to show these. These are all buckets that have gone off to florists this week within the first couple of days of me being back. And I haven't done anything in those flower patches for the last couple of weeks, and Mum and Dad haven't either. They've just left it, especially since we had all that rain. And you can see that there's an abundance of flowers. So there always will be. You might come back and look at your flower patches in horror to begin with because they look really wild. But in amongst all those weeds, you will still have some absolutely stunning flowers to work with. So thanks so much for watching today's video. It's been great to show you around again and see what's happening in the flower patch, and the weather hasn't been that brilliant while I've been away, so a lot of things have slowed down. There hasn't been a huge amount of sunshine. Today actually is the first day in the last few weeks where we've woken up and had this lovely sunshine in the morning. Don't know whether it'll last all day, but it's lovely to see it just now. But that rain has been really good for the soil, and it has meant that I haven't had to worry while I've been away about the plants getting enough water, and for having too big a job for my parents to do in terms of watering the garden. But because of the lack of sunshine, things like the dahlias and things that I would have expected to be further along, they really aren't at the moment. But then maybe that means that I'll have the benefit of these flowers coming into bloom that bit later now that I am home, which is fantastic. Next week we're going to be having a look at salvia, also known as clary sage, and we're going to be looking at the whole process again of sowing the seeds right through to them flowering and harvesting them in the garden and using them in its arrangement. So that's another part of my mini series on individual flowers, so join me then for that.